Okay, I think I am recording it. So in today's session, we're going to talk about the scientists' problem enduring question: can language shape perception? So we will discuss about the relationship between language and perceptions and also conceptions, like the way we process the perceptual information based on the language that we used or the language that we encode. So for example, before I explain the theoretical background of the topic, I want you guys to look at pictures. What is the color of the water in the oceans and what is the color of the rooftop that you see? Well, many people will say that actually the color in the ocean and the color of the rooftop is the same, which is blue. But if you come to Greece, actually they use two different words in order to emphasize their perceptual perspective that the water in the ocean have a different shades of blue compared with the one in the rooftop. So they use different word for the light blue in the rooftop compared with the blue color of the ocean. Okay, so what it means is when you use a word to describe something, the color blue in the rooftop is totally different with the concept of blue in the ocean. And that kind of distinction between different shades of blue may not necessarily exist in the conceptualization of blue in American culture, in America, you know? So, and then, when we use the word light blue and blue of the ocean, it's also very general. So you actually just can get very close to what it means with the word blue from the perspective of your culture, of your language. But there's no guarantee that you are exactly talking and seeing things from the perspective of a Greek person. Okay, so that comes to a very interesting hypothesis. It is the Sapir-Whorf theory of linguistic relativity that language doesn't just express ideas, it actively shapes them, determining how we understand the world around us. Okay? Language doesn't just express ideas, it actively shapes ideas. Language determines how we understand the world around us. I give you a little bit paraphrase of that in detail. So language is a communicative tool that embodies an interpretations of reality, and language can influence thought about that reality. Diverse interpretations of reality embodied or encoded in languages use demonstrable influences on thought, on the way we think. So to what extent do you agree that language can shape your cognition? When you see a cup, is the categories of cup, the shape of cup and everything in your mind is the same with when you translate the word cup into Spanish? Do you think that is equivalently and exactly convey the concept of cup in your language, in English language, in language and English culture to Spanish and to Spanish culture? Do you think it's the same? Or the words may be the same, but the concept may be different. The variety of cup in American culture may be different than the variety of cup in Spanish culture, and different categorization of naming and labeling things may cause different interpretation. So are there any examples that related to the language, English, Chinese, that showing language can shape the cognition of that particular speech community? Okay, so today I will talk about the study of Porodisky in 2001 with Mandarin English bilingual. The age of English acquisitions was associated with the degree to which space-time mappings display a vertical bias. Okay, what do I mean by that? So, because time is so abstract, the only way to talk about an abstract concept is using the terminology from another, more concrete domain of experience, namely that of space. For an American, time can be considered as a flowing fast like a mountain river in the spring. And if you want to benefit from its passing, you have to move fast with it. So it's a linear, step-by-step flow, like what you are seeing, like what you perceive on the screen. So that's why in English grammar, from the perspective of cognitive linguistics, of course, they use the word past and next. So the past is over, but the present you can seize and make it work for you in the next coming part, which is the future. So visualizing the futures in front of us is also very common in English, especially in business manner. So English speakers treat the cycle of time as object-like that can be measured, that can be counted as like a tangible object in the order, in the chronicle order like that. However, Chinese people, okay, I think I can move myself here so you can see. Chinese people have the idea of time in terms of over and under. So it's not horizontal, it's vertical. The word 下, so if I have a sentence, 下个星期他要回国. The word 下 is used to talk about future events. So when it is referred to, it's referred to the word next in next week. But if you translate it not with the concept, but with the word by word, a Mandarin Chinese speaker would literally say, that week. So the word 上 is up, which is above you. When you say 上个, it's used to talk about last week. So last week become up 1 week. So very interesting, right? So 下个 even is next week. But in your perception, in the way that you understand the position of the speaker in the flow of time and in an indefinite space around the speaker, 下个 is something underneath, and 上个 something above you, which is in the past. And if you translate, not with 下个, 下个 is next week, but if you just translate 下, it means under. Okay? So that's an interesting thing is the Mandarin contain metaphors that depict a vertical passage of time, and there are no equivalent temporal metaphors in English. That is also the reason why in your reading, the visual in the article that we read for the class, the visual system responded differently to Galazio and plain colors. The change wasn't seen in English speaker. It is because such perceptual difference is the matter that is recorded into your biological development in unconsciousness. So conceptual thinking has been determined and reinforced in the first language learner way before the word labels, before you learn the words. You are exposed to your speech community, and your speech community assign that label to name things in the natures in your context. So in order to denote a particular way of conceptualization, okay, that how integral and how delicate conceptualization and language connect with each other. So actually when you communicate with a person, a word can trigger different emotion, can trigger different perceptual perspective that going to be highlight or emphasized that maybe you are not aware of because you think of it from the perspective of your culture. So different languages embody different worldviews and different ways of organizing world around us. So my question is, if social linguistic conventions shape where people mentally locate temporal construct, what is the status of such mappings for those who speak two languages? Do you think that the bilingual might possess two mental timelines and each with the capacity to influence behavior separately, or do bilinguals rely on a single spatial characterization of time? So come back to the study that I told you that I will tell you today. So the Chinese English bilinguals were asked to arrange pictures of young, mature, and old of Brad Pitt. You see, Brad Pitt. And then Jet Li on your left. So they arrange the former, which is Brad Pitt, in a horizontal. Horizontal. But when it's come to Chinese people, they arrange the pictures of Jet Li vertically. Okay, that's very interesting, right? With young Jet Li appear at the top and the old one, Jet Li appear at the bottom. So it seems that culture and meaning form a tight bond, and this is context-dependent shift in behavior. So the fact that bilinguals go between these different ways of estimating time effortlessly and unconsciously fit in with a growing body of evidence demonstrating the ease with which language can creep into your basic senses, including emotion, visual perception, and now sense of time. So mentally going back and forth between different languages on a daily basis confer advantage on the ability to learn and multitask, and even long-term benefit for mental well-being in the case of a bilingual, right? So if you are bilingual, you know the differences between languages, which is you call metacognitive abilities. So that way you're aware of the similarity of differences, even when it comes to something very instinct. You have an awareness of that. It's not unconsciousness anymore. You aware of that differences, and that make your brain so flexible. So neurology can be a branch of study to investigate the phenomenon of bilingualism besides sociolinguistics and psycholinguistics. For example, in your article, instead of asking participants how they name the color, the researcher placed electron on the participant's scalp to track the tiny changes in electrical signal in the brain visual system. So the participant no longer needed to name the colors, like to speak it only, but the researcher could directly observe participant neural activity when they say that word. And here the result. So using the brain potential in a color oddball detection task with Greek and English speaker. So okay, they asked the speaker to name out to separate the ball that have a very odd blue color. So actually, the American or the people living in UK, they do not differentiate different shade of blue like the Greek one. So of course, they have some difficulties to categorize the Galaxio and the black one. So both groups were comparable on English proficiency as measured by nation vocabulary test. Also, when they test on the bilingual group of Greek and English language speaker, they use English at the relatively same frequency every day, and they spend the same amount, not really significantly different hours per week devoted for English language use. But the development of a language and perception of a bilingual depends on some contributing factors. Now, for example, do you think that if a Greek person living in America for a long time, they lose the ability to distinguish the blue balls? Compared with the one who, who study English but live in Greek, so they do not expose to the social cultural environment. What do you think? Which kind of factors will affect the bilingual perceptions? Do you think it will cause an effect or not? So the studies say that the language effects may exist at early stages of perceptual integration. So unconscious effect of language-specific terminology is, is like in your blood, it's pre-attentive color perception. So it's something very unconscious, even before you pay attention to a particular thing. So it happens very early. So Greek speaker exposure to a new cultural environment with contrasting color terminology from their native language still show the sign of the abilities to distinguish different shade of blue. So even they live in UK, no matter long or short, they still have the ability to distinguish different shades of blue. Okay, UK people, UK native speaker, English native speaker in UK, they cannot. But the study also found that actually the ability is still there, but the accuracy may diminish a little. So in the semantic mapping of native color terms and color similarity judgment, the bilingual in their study losing the distinction between play and Galaxio after 3.5 years of immersion in the UK, and living in the second language speaking country provide a physical context in which linguistic and perceptual experience are crowded? Do you think so? Because it actually shows and prove in this study that, yeah, if you live in an L2 speaking country, there is something affect to your concept. But how about other factors? So first of all, is the first language perceptual imprint on your brain is something cannot be erased, right? So we will talk about it when we talk about language attrition later. But to a certain extent, as a bilingual, you cannot help and prevent yourself from being affected by the L2 speaking country. Well, if you let it be, right? If you really strongly is it, maybe the effect is not that significant. But if you socialize conceptually in the new environment, it actually can affect your cognition. So length of cultural immersions is a very important factors that may create or strengthen a stronger word to reference mappings in their second language. Okay, compare with the learners who only receive classroom instruction. So compare with the group that do not learn English but do not live in UK. The effect is not there, right? They still retain their perceptual abilities of distinguishing the shades of blue perfectly. But even when you stay at it in a short time, a long time, okay, look at the chart, the diagram that I have. When it's a long time, you see, it's not correct. There's some mixing shade that you rather categorize it as a lighter one, or as I think as a stronger shade compared with when you were in Greek, right? In Greece, you think it belonged to the stronger shade, but when you're after a long time living in UK, you tend to think that, oh, it's just the lighter one. Okay, so you can see there's a changes here, right? They're more like the darker shade than categorized in the lighter shade. Okay, you look at things and think that it's just blue, it's just the deeper shade of blue. That's the thing. So color categories in adult are quite easily moldable. How about other colors? How about time, space, smell, scent? So some kind of categories are really directly connected with our body, with our current experience. So it's likely to be linguistic construct rather than hardwired perceptual construct that stay forever. But how about other categories, right? Like I say, or emotion, for example, right? So, and then we will talk about it in first language acquisition later, but once a child has acquired a language, a certain amount of restructure of previously formed categories occurs. So language is a powerful tool for categorizing event and object in our environment. So if it is a child, those connection is kind of weak or not fully developed. So that's the reason why when a child comes to UK or US from a Greek children, if they come to the US or UK and stay there for a while, they tend to think and act like a native speaker of that speech community, of that social cultural community. Compared with adult, I think adult take more time, right? Do you think so? Okay, to change the perception and conceptualization. That's what I mean. So this article make us think about, what is the relationship between language and cognition? Language can be learned with general cognitive skill, or language can be learned by requiring some specific linguistic capacity. So language here, as the talk in this discuss in this article, is more at depth. It's a conceptual level, right? So you can teach a student a word, but can you teach the student the perceptual, the cognitive, perceptual capacity that attached to that words, like a native speaker? Well, it's really tricky, right? Especially you're the native speaker. How about a non-native speaking teacher who may also lack that kind of social-cultural cognitive connection? Second, so what is the role of some contributing factors, right? For example, the age of acquisition, the social-cultural exposure to the second language, and language proficiency. Especially if, what is the role, right? Especially when students have to solve cognitive tasks, right? A Vietnamese student, when they just immigrate to the US, do they see things at the way we see? For example, let me say, we have the word binder. Well, do you think that a Vietnamese student have the concept of a binder and understand the ways to use the binder exactly like the same with the English one? Even they know what binder means, but can they do or use the binders as a native speaking, English native speaking student? Or do you have to guide them? You have to review them. You have to demonstrate what's there, right? And the last question I want you to think about is, to what extent that learning a new way to talk about time, color really rewire the brain? Okay, so those are interesting questions that I want you to think about after you read this article. Okay, thank you for your attention and see you in the next mini lecture.